Welcome.
Hey, nice to see a friendly face.
Yep. All right, so we're gonna get started because it's at 6. So hello everyone. Thank you for joining again to the Street Smart Summer Web Finance Program. My name is Shalom and I'll be your host today. And I'm a VP of Communications from the Street Smarts Junior Board. If you have any questions today, please put in to the Q&A session. And today we have Lorenzo Kinsel. He's here with us to share with us about his experience getting into having a resume workshop and share with us about his experience. So without further ado, hey Siri, can we have Lorenzo Kinsel here?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Oh.
Could you please repeat it?
All right, let me stop that.
That's
all right, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I appreciate the intro. And yeah, hello everyone. It's truly an honor to be here. My name is Lorenzo Cancel. I am currently a second year FDP at Apple, and FDP stands for Finance Development Program. So it's a full-time rotational program in which I get to try different finance teams for 3 to 4 months, right? And I started pretty much about a year ago, last year. So far, I've been able to rotate through operations finance, a very supply chain heavy team. After that, I rotated through R&D finance, and there I was the lead analyst for the iPhone team. So I got to work with this year's iPhone, right? iPhone 13, and then next year's iPhone 14, working with the hardware engineers, helping them manage their budgets, and of course, trying to quantify all the strategic decision-making that goes into the technologies that we choose for the iPhones. And just right after R&D, I was in retail finance in a team that focuses on payroll finance. So in that team, we essentially manage all the people costs of our 511 stores throughout the whole world. And we focus on specifically the operational expenditure costs. So for example, salaries and wages of our workers, overtime, bonus, vacation time, all that stuff. And again, it's at a global level. So it was very, very, very insightful. So that's the team that I currently find myself in right now. And this is actually my last week on this team. And next week, I'll be starting in my 4th team since I started full-time at Apple. And it'll be in carriers, sales, finance. So I'll be working with AT&T, Verizon, and all those teams that support sales for those big companies. So today I'll share this presentation on building a resume, right? And the focus is specifically tailored towards a finance resume. But as you'll see, a lot of the content that I share is also applicable to just a very general resume. So let me share my screen. Let me see. Cool. Can everybody see this? Can I get a, let's see.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. So yeah, before I get started, I'll share a little more about my background as well, in case anybody is curious. So I graduated from UC Berkeley last year, class of 2020. I majored in economics, and I'm originally from a small town around an hour and a half east of San Diego. So pretty much in SoCal. So yeah, I think that's a good introduction. Happy to share more details about my background. But today I'll focus on the resume workshop, which is why we're all here. So here's the agenda for today. I'll proceed to take everyone through before and after, and I'll share actual screenshots of my resume, how it looked like before I polished it and after some polishing. And then I'll go over some resume basics. Probably some stuff that you've heard before, but it's a lot of that is very important to emphasize. And then after that, I'll go through why the resume bullet is so important and give specific examples on how you can quantify through the resume bullet. And then I'll go through personifying your resume, talk a little bit about resume diversity and what that is, quick tips, and then lastly, a Q&A session. So here's a before and after. And this is actually my friend's, but since this is not my resume, I'll focus on my before and after. So this is my before, right? So on the left-hand side, that's actually my fall 2016 resume. So that was my freshman year at Berkeley and the fall semester. And then on the right-hand side, that is my spring semester at Berkeley. So as you can see, in both of these, you have a little too much blank space, right? The words and bullet points are very descriptive, and overall, it's just not as aesthetically appealing as a resume can and should be. But a lot more details to come for sure. This is just a high level before and after. And here is the after. On the left-hand side, that is actually the resume that I used to apply to Apple with in spring 2018. And that's how I got my Apple Finance internship for summer 2019. And then on the right-hand side, that is the resume that I created after I completed my Apple Finance internship. So as you can see, it looks a lot more polished, a lot less blank space. And if you zoom in into the bullet points, you'll see that I quantify a lot more. The overall descriptions are a lot more enhanced. But again, more details to come right now. This is just a high level. And by the way, I'm more than happy to share all my resumes, the polished before, the polished after versions and the unpolished before versions after this presentation as well. If anybody is interested in that, happy to share any of those resources. But to continue, so we have the basics here, right? So the very important basic aspects of a resume are these 4 sections. That's how, in my opinion, it comes down to. The first section is essentially choosing a template, right? And when choosing a template, you pretty much want the ideal balance between your personal preference, right? So something that shows your personal style, and obviously, more importantly, role adaptations. You want to tailor your resume and have a template that tailors your resume towards a specific role that you're applying to. And basic section number 2, it's about choosing the sections within your resume, right? And you want to essentially have a good mix of must-haves and nice-to-haves. And I'll go over that in detail shortly. Section number 3 is formatting and aesthetic appeal, right? When it comes to formatting, like you saw in my before examples of my resume, I had a lot of blank space, right? I was not really maximizing content space. So that's something that you do not want to do. And you also want to make it aesthetically appealing enough so that it pleases the eye and it doesn't distract the reader in a negative way. It actually helps, it should help the reader by saying, oh, wow, this is, a very proportional and aesthetically appealing resume. There's also going to be a section on that shortly. And lastly, grammar accuracy. As you can imagine, this is common sense, but it's so important that I chose to include it here in the basic section because, of course, you don't want to let the recruiter know that you rushed your resume or that you did not do your due diligence when it comes to checking your very important background, right? So spell checking your content, letting other people close to you read it, using software or Google Chrome plugins such as Grammarly. All those things can help. Those are just some examples, and I'll cover a little more on that later. But yeah, so the next slide, we have choosing your sections, right? And like I said, it's about choosing the right balance of must-haves and nice-to-haves. And this is not an all-inclusive list. I'm sure I missed some areas, but this is, again, based on my experience with my own resume, right? So in terms of must-haves, you need to have a highly visible name, right? That is the first thing that the recruiter or the resume reader will identify. You also want to have contact info, right? Very simply, you want to have information that shows where they can find you, whether it's an email. If you're comfortable enough, you can also share your phone number. You can put a link to your LinkedIn on there as well. And of course, a mailing address. Then, of course, you should want to show your education, where you go to school, what's your major, your expected graduation. Section number 4 is professional experiences, right? This is essentially where the meat of your resume will be, right? So you want to share, what you've done. Have you had internships? Have you had a full-time job? Have you had a part-time job? Have you had, extracurricular leadership involvement in a club in school, a nonprofit volunteering? All that section will be there. And then, of course, you have your leadership skills, which I kind of mentioned in the previous section, right? I actually chose to, in my own resume, I chose not to differentiate between professional experiences and leadership experiences. I kind of just combined everything. But again, that's just a preference thing. As long as you include a little bit of both, you'll be on a good track. And lastly, for must-haves is skills, right? I think really simplifying and specifying what skills you believe that you have and that you believe you can bring to the table is very, very important. You know, for examples are Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word. Do you have some coding background? Do you know Tableau, which is a visual data visualization app? Public speaking, right? Are you bilingual? All that good stuff, you want to include it in that section. And in terms of nice to have, again, this is, you know, some people might disagree, but I think an objective is a nice to have, right? I don't think you really need an objective. But if you really want to, if you really feel that it'll showcase something important, then by all means, feel free to include it. Same thing with achievements and awards, right? And your courses as well. Again, this is really where the preference aspect comes. If you feel that you have very, very strong courses that you think you want to highlight, same thing with achievements, you got a super amazing national award, then feel free to include that and categorize that as a must-have, right? It's really up to you. This is just my specific approach to give you guys an example. Section number 3 is again, formatting and aesthetic appeal. Right. And you heard me talk about minimizing blank and white space previously. And I think that's just very important, right? Because having too much blank space can just really can create this bias within the reader that, oh, you know, this person doesn't have as much of experience, right? Maybe because you just didn't emphasize enough in your bullet points and created too much blank space. It could really distract the reader. It just creates an overall negative perception. Secondly, you want to always leverage bold, italics, bullets, lines, strategic spacing, and the font size of your resume in order to make sure it's organized. This is very important to emphasize if you're building a resume from scratch, but ideally you shouldn't do that. Hopefully you can build from a template. There's tons of templates online. I'm happy to share my own template as well. But you will find that pretty much all kinds of templates have different ways of leveraging bolds, italics, bullet points, and so on. The other section is proportions, right? You want to make sure that everything's proportional. So as you can see in this one, in this resume example, this is a bad example because, for example, the margins at the top are different from the margins at the bottom. So you see there's more space in the bottom, and that's unproportional. That's not good. It can be distracting to the reader. You want to make sure it flows natural and proportional so as to not create any awkwardness that can distract the reader in any negative way. You don't want the reader to be focusing on your formatting. Your formatting should be polished to a point where it's actually neutral. It doesn't cause anything negative, maybe even some slight positive, but definitely not any negative. You want your reader to be focusing on the content of your resume. And here is just, again, the before and after so that you can see how I essentially made it more proportional, maximized content space, minimized any blank space. So left-hand side is before, right-hand side is after. Section number 4 is grammar accuracy, right? And this is what I meant earlier in terms of really making sure that you show the resume reader or the recruiter that you did your due diligence, that you took enough time to review your resume, that you did not rush anything. It just shows that you're giving the role that you're applying to very high importance, which we all should when we're applying to a specific job or internship or club or anything that we're applying to. So definitely, as I mentioned in the bullet points, right, any lack of grammar and sentence structure accuracy just shows a reader that you rushed it and that in a way you don't think the role that you're applying to is that important, right? So what I suggest is definitely always leverage spell check, right? As you're creating your resume in Google Docs or Microsoft Word or Apple Pages, whatever application you're using, make sure spell check is on. And what I like to do is if I'm making my resume on Google Docs, I like to leverage this application called Grammarly, which is essentially a Google Chrome plugin that is consistently checking not just your grammar, but also your sentence structure. And it's free. And the last point that I make here is asking somebody to edit your resume or read over it, right? I think a lot of times when we create our own resume, we always create blind spots along the way, which is that we sometimes miss very obvious, mistakes that we make, but because we're focusing on another important aspect of the resume, we might miss it. For example, if you're focusing on the quality of your bullet points and the actual written content, then it might be easy to miss a formatting mistake, right? So it's always really good to have others review your resume. It could be people that you trust, such as close peers. It could be a mentor, such as a professor or teacher or a leader that you look up to, essentially anybody that you really trust with your content. And this section, the resume, bullets, and quantification, this is arguably, in my opinion, probably the most important set of slides of this whole presentation when it comes to perfecting a finance resume. So if you're here because you want to focus on a finance resume, this is your section. This is the section that you want to pay the most attention to, because the main point here is that you really, really need to quantify, right? And I break down how to do that in these sections, right? You essentially want to ask these questions to yourself, right? When it comes to the first section is the what. What is a task that you perform? And in the section, you really want to make sure that you include action verbs, focus on skills and actions that transfer to the role that you're applying to, right? And then you want to ask why. Why did you perform this task? Why is it important? Was it to meet a key deliverable? Was it to fulfill an organizational goal? Why did you do what you did? And then how, right? Specifically, how did you perform this task? Specify. Don't stay at the broad general level. Did you use Microsoft Excel? Did you use Tableau? Did you collaborate with another team, another organization, another school club? What was it? And then lastly, very, very important, is the results and quantification. What was the positive results that you achieved, or the impact that you made by performing this task, right? Can you quantify? Is there a number that you can attach to it? An example sentence here is this: I improved fundraising efforts, or improved fundraising efforts led to 43% more funds than the prior year, leading to a $2,000 budget surplus. Very random example, but I'll proceed to give a more detailed example breakdown in the next slide. But hopefully this gives everyone a good high-level understanding of the what, the why, the how, and the showcasing of the results and the quantification. But again, because I think this section is very, very important, I proceeded to include a detailed example of how you would go about creating an ideal bullet point that really quantifies, right? So we can start with this very basic idea. And because a lot of us here, are in college, I included a club, essentially club treasurer idea, right? This is the example. So we start with the what, well, I'm the fundraiser. It's a fundraiser for Club X as treasurer, right? What and how? Well, I improved fundraising efforts as club treasurer through creating a diverse team, getting better, right? But then you can make it even better in level number 3, which is what and why, right? Well, I improved fundraising efforts as Club X treasurer through creating a diverse team that included members from partner Club Y in order to drive idea innovation and leverage combined membership pool. So you see, as we go down these levels, it gets more descriptive and it gets more specific, and you really answer those questions: the what and how, and then the what and why. But then we're not done yet. We can add that cherry on top, which is the result, and that is level 4, which is what, why, and result. So the final polished resume bullet in this case would be improved fundraising efforts as Club X treasurer through creating a diverse team that included members from Partner Club Y in order to drive idea innovation and leverage total combined membership pool. And here comes the quantification, which is ultimately leading to a record average 87% increase in fundraising for both clubs and a net amount of $34.50 for Club X. So as you can see, it's a lot more specific. You finish with the bang, you give the numbers that you can really showcase and essentially show off when it comes to your results. And it's very, very applicable to a finance world, right? A finance role that you are applying to. In this section, then we have personifying your resume, right? And this is where, again, it's another way of enhancing the bullet points and the actual content in the meat of your resume. And in this slide, I really want to emphasize the use of action verbs, the use of company values, the use of popular skills, and the use of industry keywords. So first you have action verbs, right? And here we use my friend Miles and his resume as an example. So as you can see, in the different sections, we can begin with section number 1. He shows how you can enhance the skills that you've shown and used previously through using strategic action verbs, right? So in his case, he uses words such as organized or reconfigured, right? In section number 2, he shows that he actively managed and distributed, right? So those are very specific action verbs that can be complemented with whatever experience you have. And in section number 3, he shows that you can, these action verbs can help the reader better understand the role quickly. So you can see in section 3, he showcased that he delivered insightful and detailed tours, right? So very descriptive and very action-packed. And the whole idea here too is that you try and include unique action verbs in every bullet point. So try to minimize any repetition of action verbs, right? You don't want to use organized, 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 managed, managed, managed in every single category, or else that'll just be too repetitive. And trust me, recruiters will notice. Company values, right? That's another very important aspect that you can leverage for your resume, right? So, and the whole point here is that it shows 2 things, right? One is that you actually read the job description or the role description of whatever company or club you're applying to. And it just shows that you have identified, what the company cares about, right? And if you bring these words that you'll find in the job description or in a company's website, if you go to any company, it's very easy to go to like their mission statement or their purpose section or the company value section. Every single big company has this. A lot of clubs in college even do so as well. If you proceed to look into those pages and you bring in those key words that highlight the values of the company or the club that you're applying to, it'll really, really help you stand out, right? So in the case of Apple, right, in section number 1, you see that we mentioned words or phrases such as extraordinary products, right? Or the idea of bringing passion and dedication to your job, right? Or in section 2, right, the idea of commitment to excellence by partnering with teams who are building innovative products, right? So this whole idea of not just excellence, but collaborative excellence, not just individual excellence, but team excellence, right? Very important concepts and ideas for you to be able to include or at least reference to in your resume. It really helps a lot. And then 3, right, in this job description example, they directly mention integrity, personal accountability, teamwork, can-do thinking. Those are all great things that and keywords that you can mention in your resume. And again, best way to do this is to check out and really read in detail the job description of the role that you're applying to, or go to a company's website to see their mission statement or their purpose or their company values. And this section is just about popular skills, right? And it's a very simple very simple aspect to consider, but I feel like it's often overlooked, right? You want to make sure that as you're creating your resume, you're really conscious that you portray these skills within you. All right. And a lot of times you don't have to directly mention the words, although it does help. You can also just indirectly refer to them, right? And the types of popular and essential skills that you want to associate with yourself, associate with your resume, and associate with your personal brand are skills and ideas such as being passionate, being hardworking, being adaptable, being a critical thinker, a self-starter, and a team worker, right? Those are all great things that you want your recruiter or your reader to associate with whatever it is that you're sharing in your resume. And then lastly, we have industry keywords, right? And this is also very important when it comes to creating the ideal finance resume, right? You want to bring in terms that you know are relevant to the industry and the specific role that you're applying to, right? Not just the company values and what they care at a high level, at a soft skill level, but what does a company and the recruitment team care about at the hard skill level, right? At the specific level. So in this case, you see that Miles mentioned that he reconfigured a reporting dashboard, right? That he analyzed current trends, that he launched market research analysis. Those are all very important industry key phrases and keywords. And in this intersection experience, he mentioned that, he did some underwriting for potential acquisitions, right? Section 2, you manage year-long budgets. And section 3, you mentioned specific skills that you have and that you think are relevant to the role. So again, this is about really specifying ideas and phrases and words that you think can really give the recruiter a sense that you have the skills, the specific skills that they're looking for. So yes. And then here we have resume diversity, right? And this slide is very simple. We just essentially wanted to show you side by side what the different kinds of resumes that can be, right? So as you can see on the left-hand side, we have my resume. In the middle, we have my friend Miles's resume. And then in the right-hand side, we just have a random template, financial analyst sample that we found online. And the whole purpose of this was that we just wanted to show you that, there is no perfect template. There are ideal templates, right? But there is no perfect one. And if you really are somebody who wants to and is interested in portraying your personality through different coloring or fonts, then maybe you can choose a resume that's more like the one on the right-hand side, right? It's really up to you. You don't have to really believe that my resume or Miles's style is perfect. And even within our styles, we have different, aspects, right? For example, I didn't include coursework, and he did. I didn't differentiate between work experience and leadership experience / club experience, and he did, right? So you see, you can really play around with the sections, the overall template, and the overall style, as long as you don't deviate too much to the point where it starts affecting you negatively. And the best way to do that is to pretty much I would encourage you to base your resume on different templates of others, and then adjust slightly based on whatever interests that you have, which is why I'm more than happy to share my template and my individual resumes in Word or PDF format for anybody here present today. And here are just some quick tips that we just wanted to include. Section 1, right? Or sorry, point number 1 is if you copy and paste from another document or source, make sure that you check the font color matches all sections. This is one of the easiest things to really miss. And I think it specifically happens when you go from Google Docs to Microsoft Word documents. For some reason, the color scales are a little different. So a lot of times I've noticed that when I copy and paste from somewhere, let's say I copy and paste from Google Docs to Microsoft Word, the color isn't actually black, it's just like a dark grayish color. And then you might proceed to send it to a recruiter, and then they might notice that, the color is a little off. So little things like that can really throw somebody off. Quick tip number 2 is when I talked about proportions and placement appeal, I think something that can help with that is consistently zoom out, right? When you're working on Microsoft Word or Google Docs, change the zoom in level, go put it at 80%, at 50%, at 90%, just different levels, so you can see like, okay, how would this look actually printed out? How would this look actually, zoomed out? I think that's very important. And then section 3 is actually pretty similar and equally important, which is something that can help you check your formatting is printing out physically, right? So you want to compare, you want to ideally print out your resume and compare how does the electronic version compare versus the printed version, right? Because sometimes when you print your resume, the formatting gets thrown off a little bit and you might have to adjust things so that doesn't happen. So it always helps to print your resume. And the other reason why this is important is because you want to make sure your printed resume is super polished and perfect and there's no weird formatting stuff, because a lot of times recruitment teams end up printing resumes as well. So you want to make sure that your resume is essentially prepared for that. Point number 4, I mentioned it previously, but it's about having other people read your resume, right? Including friends. The more people, the better. Obviously, make sure that it's trustworthy people, but I think that the more people can help you out, the better. Obviously, don't overdo this, right? You ideally don't want 30 or 20 people reading your resume, because I think that just creates like this whole web of disagreement, because some people might have significantly different philosophies of resumes or whatever. But I think at least a good of five people that you really trust would be pretty cool and helpful. Quick tip number 5 is reading your resume out loud. I think a lot of times when we're typing stuff, and obviously when we're typing things, a lot of times we're just typing as we're thinking. So if you read your resume out loud, it's really helpful to really identify blind spots in terms of sentence structure errors, grammar mistakes, or just overall, how appealing it is, like the wording is, right? How appealing the wording is, your word choice is. So reading your resume out loud really, really helps. And quick tip number 6, lastly, is similar to the power words, action verbs, industry keyword section that we described. You want to really make sure that the first word of every bullet point description is ideal and it's appealing, right? You want to make sure that it's creative and diverse, and really make sure that you don't have very simple words being the first word of every description, because that really matters. It's literally the first thing that the readers or recruiters read when reading your bullet points. And yeah, that is pretty much it. We can now have a Q&A session if there are any questions about anything I just mentioned. Happy to go back to the slides.
Thank you, Lorenzo. That was really awesome that you share all these tips with us. I'm actually going through recruiting as well, so it's definitely really useful. I was actually just looking at my resume while you're going through your points. Definitely see some improvement there, but yeah. But now we only have 2 questions, actually 3. So first question that I got was, what software did you use to create your resume? Was it Word, Pages?
Yeah, very. Yeah, that's a good question. I like Microsoft Word. I find that, for example, a lot of people like to use Google Docs, but I just think that when you transfer from Google Docs to PDF, Google Docs to Microsoft Word, a lot of times the formatting gets messed up. So I just like to keep it simple and do Microsoft Word. And then from there, I just export as PDF, which is another important tip. I should have included that. Always send your resume in PDF, never send it in Microsoft Word format to a recruiter. That's an easy mistake that a lot of people make early on. I made it at one point. But yeah, PDF format, but I use Microsoft Word to polish.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So we have a question asking, what if you don't have any work experience, as in 0 experience? How do you still make a good resume? What are some advice you would give to people who don't really have like work experience?
That's a good question, right? And I think the core of that question comes from like what you define as work experience, right? And I would encourage somebody who's like a freshman in college or a high school senior to really be flexible and open-minded with what you consider work experience, right? Or leadership experience, because a lot of times people are hesitant to include, oh, well, I worked part-time at a fast food restaurant during high school. Well, guess what? That is actually a valuable work experience, right? Working at fast food restaurants, for example, is not easy. It takes teamwork, it takes good communication skills, it takes being able to work under stress. So I think at the core, I feel like most of us have something that we can share, whether it was tutoring, right? Maybe you volunteered to tutor in high school. Maybe you were part of a team sport in high school. Maybe you were part of the orchestra or the band. All those things can be included in your experience section, in your resume. Really be in a way kind to yourself and be open-minded about what you think is a valuable experience, which I think pretty much anything is a valuable experience. Even if you're young, even if you're in high school or a freshman in college. It's really, really important. Actually, that's glad you asked that, because I was actually stressing about that when I created my freshman year at Berkeley resume. I was like, damn, like, I just started Berkeley, like I don't have anything, relevant. I don't have an internship yet. Well, I proceeded to include my high school job. I included my high school job in there. I included a volunteer position, or not position, but a volunteer experience that I had in high school. So I think it's overall is about really reflecting on what you've actually done. I feel like we've all done at least something outside of the classroom, and getting creative with that and being open-minded with what you consider to be something that is showcase worthy.
Yeah, I agree. Even if you go to like a competition and then you
Yeah.
won the competition, and it's still, yeah, very relevant.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think I just got to answer back. I was asking this person about which area or industry that that the student is trying to get into. Yeah, never mind. Forget what I just said.
Okay.
All right, next question. How do we target companies and mold our resume accordingly?
Can you repeat it? Sorry, I think I missed it.
Yeah, how do we target companies and mold our resume accordingly?
How do you target companies and mode your resume?
Yeah. So for example, if I want to apply to finance internship, to Apple, to Google, to these big tech companies versus I don't know, sales and trading, investment banking, like how do
Yeah.
we target these companies? Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a really, really good question. I think that there's multiple ways of seeing this, right? One is like you really need to understand what that actual industry is, right? So to your example, right? Is it finance? Is it sales and trading? And even within finance, there's so many umbrellas, right? Is it banking? Is it corporate finance? Is it investment management, right? There's so many examples. So I think the first part is really having enough knowledge at the personal level to be able to tailor your resume, right? So you want to make sure that you know the industry that you're applying to, right? And once you have a good sense of the industry, right? Once you know what using the finance umbrella, because that's my focus as an example. Once you know the difference between corporate finance, investment banking, commercial banking, investment management, asset management, all these different subsections, once you're able to know the difference, then you'll be able to write a very specific and tailored resume, and you'll be able to talk about industry keywords such as the one what Miles included here, such as market research analysis, such as dashboard creation, current trend analysis, all these key phrases and words that can only come about if you know what people in the industry do. So that's one side, right? That's the industry level. And then once you have a good sense of that, the second level is tailoring to the company, right? Every company essentially has its own different culture, right? And in the case of Apple and pretty much every major company in the world, and even small and medium-sized ones, it's very important. And their marketing and internal communications team, sorry, their marketing and external communications teams, they all make it a very important point to, in every website, essentially showcase what is their purpose, what is their mission, and what are their values. It's a rare for me to find a company that doesn't have that publicly identified. So do that. find what they care about, right? For example, putting Apple and Google as an example, right? Apple is different at the cultural level and at the values level from Google because Apple cares about saying no to 99 ideas, but yes to one, and focusing all in on that one idea. But Google is more open, right? They care about, okay, from those 100 ideas, I'll say yes to 30, and then we'll see what happens, right? And I mean, which one's better? I don't know. Maybe I might say Apple because I'm biased, but overall, it's just different approaches, right? So that simple idea showcases how the culture is different, how the company values are different. So if you're really able to identify and learn about the differences like that, I think you'll be in a good track. And something that helps is, again, going to the company website, looking at their values, their mission statement, and then also reading the job description. A lot of times job descriptions have very, very important references to those specific cultural values and industry values that a company cares about.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. I know, for example, like Goldman Sachs, it's very focusing on like teamwork. So when like recruiter, they look at the resume, they specifically look for keywords like teamwork activities. So yeah. So moving on, one of our students' question is, what is your opinion on putting relevant coursework in resumes?
Yeah, I mean, I chose to never do that, but I think that is just because of my specific coursework background, right? I majored in economics, so the only industry related courses that I might have taken was maybe like financial economics, maybe like one of my like game theory classes, right? Very specific classes, but it wasn't that many. I didn't think it was going to help me, but I can see how it can be very powerful for some people. For example, if you're an economics major, but you're also taking data science classes or computer science classes, then for sure, I would invite you to include your coursework because it shows that, you're not only an econ student, but you're also expanding to other majors and other classes, right? So it really depends on you and your background and what classes you've taken. If you feel like you want to showcase, creative classes that you've taken or specific classes that you've taken, by all means do it. The other reason why I didn't include it is because Berkeley econ is a very broad major. I wasn't in a business school, right? For example, my friend Miles, he chose, let me see, sorry, let me open it again. He chose to include his coursework, as you can see here, relevant coursework, because he was at Cal Poly SLO, he was in the business school there. His major was business and his concentration was finance. So as you can see, that business major and concentration in finance is a lot more specific than my econ major. So that means that he took a lot more specific classes that it's good to show off in your resume, right? He had financial accounting, real estate finance, fundamentals of corporate finance. I never even took those classes, right? I was taking general economics courses. So again, it really depends on your school, your background, and the courses that you're taking, and of course your major.
Got it. Thank you. Then I have a follow-up question. Would you recommend us putting relevant coursework on LinkedIn?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. LinkedIn. Put it on LinkedIn. I have my coursework on LinkedIn. The only reason why yes to LinkedIn, no to resume is a very simple answer. It's just a space, right? Obviously, here you're trying to maximize space and making sure that you put all the important key things in your resume. But LinkedIn it's a literal website profile, right? So you can make it as long as possible, within reason. But that's the reason why it's a yes to LinkedIn, no to resume. It's space. It's a space thing.
Got it. Yeah, obviously quality over quantity, right?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. All right. Follow up with the next question. How would you reframe volunteer/internship experience that have nothing to do with the positions that you're applying for, especially they are the only experiences that you have?
Very good question, right? And this goes on to one of the first questions I was asked, which is, what if you don't have any experience? If you find yourself in the position where the only experience you have is volunteer positions or something completely unrelated to whatever it is you're applying to, focus on the soft skills, right? You can always focus on the soft skills and, for example, extract, did you work with the team, right? How collaborative were you in that team? Did you work under pressure? In situations, we're always working under pressure. We're always meeting deadlines. We always have time constraints. So from everything I just said, you can extract, even if it's a volunteer position at a food shelter, or an animal shelter. Well, a lot of times you have a team, so boom, collaboration, right? A lot of times you are meeting deadlines because even if it's an animal shelter, maybe you are working towards this big event that you have planned by the end of the year. Boom, it's time management and working under pressure. So really try and extract those key ideas, those key soft skills, and where applicable, try and specify into hard skills a little bit, right? So for example, if it was an animal shelter, something completely random, well, and you're interested in finance, did you manage the budget? Did you work with any kind of sales, any kind of spreadsheets? Did you use Excel for anything? Even if it was organizing a guest list, did you work with Excel in any way, right? Try to identify the specific transferable skills. But I understand that it might not always be possible for the hard skills, but trust me, it's for sure always possible for the soft skills. There's always something valuable in the soft skill side that you can extract and can showcase how much you've worked.
Got it. Yeah, that's very important. Soft skills, communications, teamwork, work under pressure, they're all really important. Time management is important too. Yeah. All right. Moving on to the next question. What is the sequence of the resume like? So what's the sequence of a resume should look like? Like what should we include first and what should we include last? So I think for this question, Lorenzo, if you could just share, I think this page is fine. Just kind of go through like the sequence of the resume for our
definitely.
student.
No, yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, I think this question is easily answered if you base your resume on a template initially and then you adjust. But you'll find that most templates have name on top, right? As you can see, Miles put his name on top and then followed by contact info right below, in smaller fonts, because again, you want your name to really stand out. And then I've seen the pretty like 95% of the resumes I've seen have education right after. Definitely your GPA, anything related to education. If you were to include coursework, it also goes there. And then professional experience as the follow-up section, then leadership, and then skills and interests at the end, right? If you see mine, let me see where mine's side by side. Okay, it's mine. Same thing, name on top, contact info right below, education right below, and then boom, experience, right? In Miles' case, again, he differentiated between professional experience / work experience and leadership. I didn't, I combined everything. But typically it's always name, contact info, education, experience sections, and then boom, at the bottom, you either have your achievements, skills and interests, or anything related to that. If you were to include an objective, you would put it between education and experience. I think that's a good framework to start with. But again, it never hurts to look at other templates online, ask other people that are maybe like a year or two ahead of you, career-wise, asking for your resume. Feel free to use mine as reference, for example. But I think that's a good rough framework.
Thank you. So I actually have a follow-up question. I've seen some professionals' resume that they have worked in the industry for 3 or 4 years, and their resume starts with their experience, and then they actually put their education at the end. So my question is, when do we start putting experience first and then maybe education or interest at like kind of below, or do you change it at all?
That's a very great question. Yeah, I think that's definitely more applicable to your point. People who had 4 or 5 years of experience in the industry, right? I think as you get older, then your main focus of your resume is probably less and less education, because that happened 5-6 years ago, right, at the time that you're writing the resume, right? Whatever positions you had are a lot more relevant. So yeah, no, that's a great point. I think at this point, I graduated college a year ago. It's probably still fair for me, but I think it would make a lot of sense to include education, not prioritize it as much as you're, 4, 5, 6, 10 years out of college. And then just to, as a follow-up to that, at this point, because, I've only been working for around a year, I don't think it's appropriate at all to have a 2-pager resume, right? But again, if you're 5, 10, 15 years into your career, I think a 2-pager resume is appropriate just to really showcase all those details. But I think for college students and people 3 to 4 years out of college, a 2-pager is a no, in my opinion.
For sure, yeah. 1 page, concise and simple. I agree with you. So moving on to the next question, is it okay to add a picture on your resume?
Out of what? Sorry?
A picture.
Oh, picture. Oh yeah, yeah. I would think so too, right? But this is where I'm actually glad I'm in this slide, right? This is where the resume diversity comes in, right? I think it's appropriate if it really matches the overall tone and style of your resume. For example, adding a picture to mine would look a little awkward, right? I think my style doesn't really is not really inclined towards that, but maybe adding a picture to the one on the far right, completely appropriate. It makes sense based on the style. It's really up to you, right? If I really, really, really wanted to include a picture, maybe I can change the font size and the structure of my resume and put it in there. But it really, I feel like at this point, it might not really match the overall style that I currently have. I would have to change my overall formatting and style. But overall, at its core, I don't think it's a bad thing to do. I think it's really about preference and the style that you want to share. And your personality too, right? I think it really shows something about your personality as well. And last point on that question, I think from what I've noticed talking to recruiters, I'm very close to my FDP director, the lead recruiter for the FDP program that I'm part of at Apple. It seems that the industry, at least for corporate finance and specifically tech, they're gradually becoming very, very open-minded about the types of resumes they receive. So just keep that in mind, right? As we progress, people are a lot more comfortable receiving very unique and colorful and picture resumes. It's not as traditional as it used to be for tech, at least. But to your point earlier, right? If you're applying to Goldman Sachs, you probably don't want to do that, right? You want to make sure that the style matches the industry.
Got it. Yeah, it totally makes sense. I remember seeing some colorful resume for Spotify on LinkedIn too. So,
I saw that one
yeah.
too. That one was awesome. I saw it. It went viral.
Yeah. Right. So we are actually running out of questions. If you guys have more questions about maybe Lorenzo's experience working at Apple, feel free to shoot that in.
Yeah, happy to answer anything about that as well. So let's see.
We have someone who raised your hand.
So I hadn't seen the chat until now. So no, yeah, of course. Yeah, I see a lot of thank yous, and no, it's my pleasure. Really, really, really happy to be here. And we've all needed help, right? That's the thing, right? This is why I love doing things like this. I've gotten to some level of success in my career. But it hasn't just been solely because of my hard work. It's been a lot because people have always been there to help me, right? Whether it's with resume help, cover letter help, interviewing skills help. There's always some way you can be helped. And I'm always happy to be that for somebody else because again, we've all needed it at some point in our lives.
For sure. Thank you.
And yeah, I will definitely share the presentation file and I'm happy to also share my resume in PDF format as well.
Thank you. So we just got a question in just now. So the question is, what is something that would make a finance recruiter want to hire you for asset and investment management specifically?
Something that would make a recruiter hire you based on what?
Hold on, I lost the question.
No worries.
What is something that would make a finance recruiter want to hire you? And this is specifically for asset and investment management specifically.
Asset investment management. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely out of my area of expertise. Yeah, I mean, that's the asset. And I think that's tough. I think right off the top of my head, when it comes to investment management, I think being able to share that you have some experience would be very, very valuable, and something that would be easy to do in terms of sharing experience for that industry is maybe if you've managed your personal portfolio, maybe share some insights into that, right? Like how have you successfully managed your own portfolio? Have you helped your friends manage their portfolios by giving advice? Whatever the case might be, I think really specifying on experience, relevant experience is very important, right? And I think that goes for any finance um, subsection, right? Whether it's corporate finance or investment banking, the more you can specify, the better, right? For example, you wouldn't want to apply to an investment management or asset management position with my resume, right? They will know that I'm sending them a very general finance resume that is not directly related to what they care about. So it's really about specifying and tailoring your resume to the specific skills and work type and work activities that you're applying to essentially. But I know that was a very general answer. What I would encourage you, this is another piece of advice, kind of related. Reach out to people on LinkedIn, right? And I think that's the best way to organically learn, what a recruiter might care about. If you're interested in applying to investment asset management in Wells Fargo, literally look up on LinkedIn, right? Wells Fargo investment asset management, and you'll see a bunch of people there. I actually know somebody. If you are interested, I'm happy to refer you guys to them. But yeah, no, leverage LinkedIn. I think that's very important. That's actually how I met Leon. Reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Right. Yeah. I know that from our last previous session, we had someone from Goldman Sachs, and he also talked about networking on LinkedIn. So that's a recurring theme. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we have Ritu who raised her hand. Ritu, did you want to talk? I can allow you to ask your question. Okay, you have been unmuted. Ritu, did you want to ask a question? Okay, maybe it was a mistake. Let me. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. But I do have last question. This is kind of geared towards your experience at Apple. Yeah, I know you mentioned earlier that you were in like a rotation team structure, right? So you've experienced the R&D, the iPhone production, and you're about to go into this retail sales, right? So what team or what specific function that you've been in is your favorite and why?
Yeah, no, that's an amazing question. Let me stop sharing my screen so you guys can see my face a little more. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, great question. No, first of all, FTP has been awesome, right? And I think any kind of rotational program is very valuable, especially at a large company, because as you can imagine, the work type can vary a lot. Work culture can vary a lot from team to team. And I have experienced that first-handedly, right? Even the hours that you work change a lot. Overall, to answer your question, my favorite team has been R&D finance. I think I found that to be very exciting because I was working with Apple's top product, which is the iPhone, right? I got to see, the secret insights into what's going to be in iPhone 13. It's funny, I was looking at, Mac rumors, an article like last week, and it was saying like, some rumors and gossip about what might be in the iPhone 13. And then it felt kind of cool to be like, oh, that's true, that's not true, that's true, that's not true. I was like already identifying, right? So that's super exciting, right? And I think R&D and finance is very interesting because you're working directly with the hardware engineers and you're essentially helping them manage their money. And I think that scenario is very interesting because, as you can imagine, the mindset of a finance individual versus a hardware engineer individual is very different, right? The hardware engineer, their main goal is to have a viable, polished product by the time we're ready to launch. Our goal is close to that, but with the finance perspective on it, which is we don't want to blow, over $2 billion on an iPhone when it can actually cost just $1 billion to mass produce the iPhone. So it's really about working with engineers, helping them understand like, hey, I really want what you want, which is an awesome viable product, but at the same time, let's not blow our budget to the point where we're gonna, make our executives mad, our leadership mad, and we're gonna blow some of next year's, budget, right? So it's really about being strategic with the funds, and being very collaborative with a non-finance partner, being the engineering team, who essentially sees their world very differently. As you can imagine, engineers and finance people see the world a little differently. So it's about being able to bridge that, bridge that connection and, finding that common ground, I think is very important. So yeah, that's why I liked R&D a lot. It was super cool. And plus the culture is amazing in that team. They really care about work-life balance. That's something that I care about a lot. Other teams, it can get pretty crazy in terms of hours. So I really value that a lot. Not just because, not just because I'm, lazy or whatever, but I value side projects a lot. Being able to do things like this, for example. I value my side time a lot in terms of like being able to have side hustles, side projects, all that stuff. So yeah, that team has been awesome. Was awesome from that perspective too.
Got it. And we really appreciate your time for being here as well. So can you tell us a little secret of what's going to be in iPhone 13?
Unfortunately, no. I'll probably get fired. Unfortunately, I can't, but it should come up soon. Hopefully, we might release something.
We'll look forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, no, I saw somebody requested my LinkedIn in the chat. More than happy to reach out to anybody through LinkedIn. I think my phone number is in LinkedIn as well. So just look at my profile. My phone number's there. If you want to, text me. I have an iPhone, so just iMessage me and we can schedule a call if you're interested. Again, more than happy to help anybody. And I'll give you, Leon, and the panelist team, my resume and this deck as well, so you guys can have that and share it with the team.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll send out an email with the presentation and your resume that you provided for us, and we really appreciate your time. It's 7:02, approaching 7:03, so I'm going to end the session, but Lorenzo, it is our pleasure to have you here. I'm sure our students had a great time learning from you as well, so you take care for the night and we'll keep in touch.
Of course, yeah, definitely. My pleasure, everyone. Have a great rest of your night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.